So we can see the leaders who arrived a little earlier today at Radio Canada in Montreal for this debate. It will be broadcast live. It will last 2 hours until 8 o'clock without commercial interruption. And this debate tonight will cover 5 main themes. So the cost of living, energy and climate, trade war, identity and sovereignty, immigration, and foreign affairs. But there are 2 last-minute decisions that have, let's say, slightly disrupted the debate. Co-leader Jonathan Pednaud reacted today. If you like, we will listen to him right away and then return to the studio for the rest of this presentation.
We are not here because there is an arbitrary political decision made by the Debate Commission that deprives us and deprives Canadians of an important voice at a crucial moment in Canadian history.
Are you going to court?
We have considered the possibility of filing an injunction. Unfortunately, as you know, filing an injunction takes time. We were deprived of that time.
The impression is that the Commission is somewhat at the mercy of or listening to other parties, and that should not be the case. The Commission should really demonstrate its neutrality.
Be independent.
Independent. And how is it that the decision wasn't made earlier? I mean, we already knew the nominations have been closed for several days.
This exercise of them taking photos that the leaders engage in just before the debate. So it also gives us an idea of what the studio will look like. And we'll come back to that image, if you don't mind, Geneviève, a little later. For now, I would like us to also talk about the other surprising news yesterday, the fact that the time was changed.
Sundays will receive all the attacks, but at the same time, everyone will want to attack him to score points by attacking him. So everyone, in my opinion, will want to speak at the same time. The format will also allow people to have exchanges. I hope that Canadians will be well served. I hope that Canadians will understand each one's platforms and policies. Is that what's going to happen? I'm not 100% convinced, because precisely there is much more to lose than to gain. And in this exercise, and at the end of the election, the electoral result, there will be losers and there will be a winner. And we feel right now that the stakes are high. So a lot of pressure. And we have 2 people for whom it will be new tonight, namely Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney, who have never participated in a leaders' debate, but also 2 experienced individuals. Mr. Singh, it's not his first debate. There have been several. Mr. Blanchet also performs very well.
But Mr. Singh and Mr. Blanchet, and I interrupt you because I'm bringing you back to that, it's also that they have nothing to lose that night.
Exactly. It can't be worse than it is right now. But at the same time, they have to do well because their political future could also be at stake, especially for the New Democrats and for the Bloc tonight. For Mr. Singh, I would say it's perhaps good practice for tomorrow. And tomorrow, the debate in English will undoubtedly be more decisive for the New Democrats. But today, it's really about the Bloc, trying to recover what has been slipping away from them since the beginning of the campaign.
Eric, we've seen it during the campaign, and now tonight there are different themes that will obviously be addressed. But what we've seen over the past few weeks is that the topic dominating is the question of the ballot. It's Donald Trump, obviously. So is that also what we will inevitably talk about tonight?
I think so. I think it's the issue of this electoral campaign. But the challenge, I think tonight, will be for Yves-François Blanchet to have something to say about this issue, because it's really a contest between Mark Carney and Yves-François Blanchet in Quebec. If we look at the Conservative polls, their vote is quite stable. They don't have many opportunities to make gains in Quebec. It's really between the Bloc and the Liberals. We've seen a shift of about 10, maybe 20 points between the 2 parties in Quebec. So it's going to be between these 2 leaders. And that's where I'm most curious to see what the dynamic will be. And I also see that they are next to each other. So it's going to be quite interesting.
And we will also watch the tone, because it plays a role in this campaign, the tone of the exchanges. And as you said so well, Geneviève, when it's cacophonous, people like it more or less. First, we can't hear anything. And then it becomes irritating at a time when people are particularly vulnerable, perhaps. I think they might be more sensitive to the tone of the leaders.
Especially since tonight, as it's being done in French, and for some, It can be a challenge. We shouldn't focus too much on that. So we've been hearing this for quite some time now. And even Mr. Blanchet says, I don't want to focus too much on the quality of the language. And so I want to give my opponent a chance as well. But we don't want to give the opponent all the chances. So it's about finding the right balance, not looking like someone who attacks too much.
And that's a challenge.
Yes.
We will keep an eye on all this, watch all this, of course, and we'll get back to you right after. I'll be back with my guests, with whom I will dissect everything. So let's go straight to the debate that is starting right now. I'll see you right after. Stay tuned.
Who tonight will reassure you or inspire you? Welcome to the 2025 Leaders Debate.
Tariffs. The word tariff is one of the most beautiful words in the dictionary.
This election is the most important of our lives.
We will never be an American state. Never.
The American threats are huge, but there are other issues.
We definitely choose Quebec.
We choose Quebec.
Donald Trump attacked our country, so we must defend the workers.
Live from the Radio Canada House in Montreal, here's the 2025 Leaders Debate with Patrice Roy.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Leaders Debate in French. With us, Mark Carney, leader of the Liberal Party, Pierre Poilievre, leader of the Conservative Party, Yves-François Blanchet, leader of the Bloc Québécois, Jagmeet Singh, leader of the New Democratic Party. Good evening to all four of you.
A very good evening.
Thank you for being here. And ladies and gentlemen, what time is it? 6 p.m. in a few seconds? If this important meeting has been moved up, it's to give the greatest number of citizens the opportunity to listen without missing a decisive moment for another passion we have, hockey. By the way, I'm stepping out of my reserve for a few seconds. Canadians, you better win tonight with all this. I also specified that the invitations to the leaders were managed by the Debate Commission, and the positions on the stage were assigned randomly. But the questions, the topics, the editorial choices are ours. I will manage the speaking time fairly in an equal zone. 5 themes tonight, obviously unavoidable: the trade war with the United States, the cost of living, energy and climate, immigration and foreign affairs, and finally, identity and sovereignty. And I will have a few rapid-fire questions at the very end of the debate. This debate is your debate tonight. You will be as free as possible. The only rule I impose on you is not to speak at the same time. If there is a cacophony, I will ask Pascal, our sound engineer, to cut the microphone. As the game begins, I was going to say, good match. Ladies and gentlemen, let's start with a first opening question. You will each have 45 seconds to respond. This election, according to many, has been hijacked by Trump. So to assert our sovereignty at the start of this debate, I ask you for 2 concrete proposals that will change the lives of Canadians, but have nothing to do with the United States. 45 seconds. Mark Carney, you're the first to speak.
First of all, thank you, Mr. Roy, and I would like to thank the people at home for joining us and the other leaders for your service to Canada. 2 things, nothing to do with Mr. Trump. Firstly, we need to double the pace of housing construction here in Canada. That is fundamental. And secondly, we need to strengthen and promote our cultural institutions in Canada.
Very well. So, Mr. Poilievre, 45 seconds. 2 things. You promise Canadians that will change their lives, which have nothing to do with the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Roy, and thank you to my fellow citizens for being here today. Obviously, life is no longer affordable. The promise of an affordable life is broken. Now, I have a plan to make life more affordable by cutting taxes by 15%. This is an element that will reward work for the middle class and for seniors who have already worked. Second element, we will eliminate the GST on new homes and encourage municipalities to reduce their taxes as well, so that our young people can save up to $100,000 for a new home and restore the promise of Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Poilievre. Mr. Blanchet.
I feel like going back to something I do all year long. Besides thanking you for hosting us and this opportunity that I have long awaited, I travel around Quebec and I want us to focus on two things. I talked about before the crisis with Mr. Trump. It is the right for Quebec to have an economy that is different and open to the world, which will be based on its own natural resources, its own commitment to a green economy, but also the right for Quebec to be different in terms of language, culture, values, and in a successful immigration model. These are elements that we should have always addressed, but they will take on a particular significance in the context of the crisis with Mr. Trump, of course.
Very well. Mr. Singh, 45 seconds. Two elements that have nothing to do with the American crisis.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question, and good evening, everyone. First, I want to start by talking a little about values. What are the values on which we will base a response to this case, to this question? The value is that Canadians, Quebecers, want to take care of each other. We stick together. That is a fundamental will, a fundamental value. And what represents these values? It's our public healthcare system. And we have nothing to do with the United States, with our universal and public healthcare system. And two elements within it are access to medication. We want to improve it so that everyone can have access to the medication they need. And dental care is another thing I want to enhance, improve. It's thanks to us that you have this program.
Thank you. By the way, rest assured, Mr. Singh, I think you were disappointed. We will also talk about health, and I will ask you questions about it later. The first theme, therefore, is unavoidable, of course, the trade war.
Keeping Trump. Indeed, it's going to be difficult.
We don't know what awaits us with him.
I think there's no solution that's going to be possible.
We always thought it was an allied country. It doesn't make sense.
The trap is to reason.
The government should be very strong.
Stay firm.
Remedy in its place.
Otherwise, he will completely destroy us.
The response should be pragmatic.
It would be good to withdraw some of our services that the United States uses. They need us.
An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
No fooling around.
Get us out of this mess.
We need a leader who can make decisions that will shake Trump, destabilize Trump, and earn respect in Canada.
What do you plan to do with the new president of the United States?
What do you intend to do with this president in the United States? Obviously, that's the question, the elephant in the room. There are, for your information, 1,376 days exactly remaining in Mr. Trump's term. Why do you believe you are the best here tonight to negotiate with Trump? First to speak, Mr. Poilievre, 35 seconds.
First of all, we will never be an American state. We will be sovereign. But from the very first day as Prime Minister, I will begin renegotiations to expedite an agreement that ends the tariffs and protects our sovereignty. We cannot control Trump. So at the same time, we must control what we can. That is, overturn the liberal economic policies that have weakened our country, unlock our resources, cut taxes, bring jobs back here to face Trump with strength.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. 35 seconds.
All right. Firstly, in a crisis, you must plan for the worst case scenario. You need to have a plan to build a strong economy here in Canada. And you must respond with overwhelming force. And these are the same elements that will succeed with Mr. Trump. He respects strength. He respects people who know how the world works and how the private sector operates. And Canada must create other options new reliable partners on a global scale, and I know them.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. Mr. Blanchet.
Mr. Trump, in the end, will hang himself with his own rope because the measures he is taking are extremely toxic for the U.S. economy. But in the meantime, he will cause damage everywhere. Damage in Quebec, damage in Canada, damage in Europe, in Mexico. And I believe that we need to add up the GDP of all these places, which is greater than that of the United States, and a larger population, so that the retaliations during the more aggressive tariff period will hurt the United States very much. But we must negotiate rationally and neither succumb to fear nor use fear for political purposes.
Mr. Singh, conclusion, then it will be the open debate.
It's a moment of, it's a question of priority. And for me, it's time to invest, not to cut. It's time to protect what is dear to us, like our farmers, our culture, the French language, not to sacrifice them. It's time to defend who we are, what our values are. And as I said, a deep value for us is the idea that we take care of each other. So we must do it. And how are we going to do it? It's by strengthening our healthcare system, not by Americanizing our healthcare system. It's crucial that we defend who we are.
So the open debate that starts in about 15 minutes, gentlemen. Mr. Poilievre, you said Carney is a political con artist, a disconnected globalist banker, weak and compromised. Then Mr. Carney, you said, Mr. Poilievre, that he is a career politician and that he doesn't understand how the world works. I ask you the same question. Which of you two, first, is capable of standing up to Donald Trump? Mr. Poilievre.
I am, because I will put Canada first. I will never compromise the interests of our country. And I will control what we can here. It's obvious that we can't, that no one will be able to control Donald Trump's decisions, but we can control our domestic economy by overturning the economic policies that the Liberals have implemented to weaken the country and make us more dependent on the Americans, that is, by blocking their projects.
But Mr. Poilievre, you want to make Canada more like the United States.
It's not true.
You want to Americanize our system, privatize our system.
That's not true.
And everyone knows that's what conservatives do.
That's not true.
Mr. Carney, why do you say you are better than Mr. Poilievre?
Okay, first, I know how to negotiate. And I agree with Mr. Singh, we must start by stating things that will never be on the table. The French language, Quebec culture, and the management of gold, never on the table. Our water, our resources. Okay, first. Secondly, regarding Mr. Blanchet's point, the opportunity with the European Union. I have already started new relations with the European Union as Prime Minister, with meetings with the President of France and the President of the European Union in order to...
There's a lot in there. First, and this might be accurate, you claim to have expertise in crisis management, but I haven't seen any. You claim to have expertise in negotiation. Allow me to say perhaps in tax havens, but in negotiating trade agreements, I haven't seen that. We have to take your word without political experience. And I find it amusing that while everyone says, hey, we need to unite and work together, on one hand, you have never spoken, at least not to me, before tonight. And we try not to work on how we can collaborate as equals, Quebec, Canada, Mexico, European partners. We try to score points in a division that only serves the strategy of the United States.
Okay. I just started as Prime Minister a month ago. In the first week, I reached an agreement with all the premiers. The Premier of Quebec, the premiers of the provinces and territories, Makindai, regarding free trade in Canada, regarding trade corridors. That's an example of, yes, you will sit with at least the provincial premier. You will sit with elected parliamentarians in the House of Commons in Ottawa, who will be as elected as you might be.
Mr. Poilievre, you had the same...
The problem, Mr. Carney, is that your party has been in power for 10 years. And during that time, it's not the meetings that will change things. It's the policies that have blocked our natural resources. It's Bill 69, an unconstitutional law that blocks not only pipelines, but also dams, mines, and liquefied gas exports. We already have free trade agreements with Europe. The Conservatives negotiated it, but we can't export our products overseas because the laws that prevent development, which you continue to support, will prevent that. In a war, we need to eliminate those laws, replace them with laws that will unlock our resources and allow us to export overseas and between provinces to truly become economically and energetically sovereign.
We will also talk again in the third segment about...
In a war, it's a matter of priority. And Mr. Carney, unfortunately, your priority, in the early days, you had time to meet the king, but you did not increase the amount people receive when they lose their jobs because of this trade war. At that time, people who rely on science and employment, that means maybe half of your salary. And for people who have already lost their jobs, it's not enough to pay the bills, to pay the rent. And it shows the lack of priority. For me, workers are number one. We must have a system in place to help them.
We will hear one in a few seconds, Mr. Carney responds. Then I have another question for Mr. Blanchet. Mr. Singh, you know...
Okay. Firstly, we need to fight in a trade war with our counter tariffs, and all the revenue from our counter tariffs goes to the workers and businesses most affected by this war, not to reduce taxes like Mr. Poilievre.
You want to increase them all the time. You're a liberal, you like to raise taxes. That's what your party...
I just arrived and I cut...
For a fourth Liberal Act.
I just arrived.
You were Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. Do you deny that?
Both will cut. Honestly, I can try here. Both will cut taxes. Both will cut taxes for billionaires, for millionaires, and they've already done that. The first step you took was to cut taxes for, in fact, the people with your figures who are millionaires. And Pierre Poilievre wants to do the same thing. I'm talking about Mr. and Mrs. Trudeau.
We can cut the consumer carbon tax.
Very well. Mr. Singh, Mr. Blanchet, you have been arguing to Canadians for several days that it would be better if we found ourselves in a minority government situation. You have said it clearly. In front of Trump, can't Canadians ask themselves the question, shouldn't we have a stronger, therefore, majority government? Mr. Blanchet.
I don't know where the reasoning comes from that a minority government, which should normally last 4 years, would be weaker than a majority government.
There is no marriage, it is weak.
Go say that in Germany, which only governs with coalitions. There are many countries in the world that govern with coalitions. And if that is the will of the people, so much the better. And currently, it is possible that Canadians, and perhaps even Quebecers to some extent, want to place a certain trust in the person with the least experience in political affairs. Wouldn't it be normal in a context where Quebec has a different economy, different interests, a different identity, a different culture, to arrange for a parliament where we, Quebecers, will ensure that our economic difference...
Let's just talk a bit about minority government.
Mr. Singh, about the minority government, why we'd be better off?
The point of having a minority government is to help people, to use our power, to make a difference in people's lives. But honestly, Mr. Blanchet, unfortunately, in this last part of the last minority government, you have shown that you are as useless as the monarchy. You have effectively done nothing for the people. And worse, you voted against measures that help Quebecers.
I was expecting.
Dental care, medical.
I have the right to a few seconds on this.
And these are measures that have helped hundreds and thousands of people.
The measures within Quebec's jurisdiction, dental care, drug insurance, Quebec's jurisdictions.
It's the people in Quebec with the money that Quebec sends to Ottawa for a vision. It's the people in Quebec. They have neither the competence nor the expertise, nor the state in Ottawa.
We pay the bills for the elderly
when we want to be efficient. Now, let me finish the sentence.
Just conclude, Mr. Blanchet.
When we want to be efficient, we entrust the means to the people who have the expertise, the competence, and the legal jurisdiction to do it. That's Quebec. Now, the NDP, among all, gave $2 billion to a private insurance company.
We pay the bills for the elderly.
Things were going well at their place. By the way, the time has been very equal so far. Mr. Carney, on the minority government, you had raised your hand.
Mr. Roy, we are still in a crisis, the serious crisis of our lives. We must react with overwhelming force. Yes, we need to lower some taxes. Yes, we need to reduce red tape, but the government must act in a crisis. So we need to have an aligned government.
But when you were Justin Trudeau's economic advisor, you weakened our economy. We need economic sovereignty, meaning bringing production and paychecks back here. I propose to remove the Liberals' anti-development laws, to speed up construction permits to 6 months instead of 17 years, create ready-to-build zones with pre-approved permits so we can have projects like GNL Quebec, which could send our energy overseas to Europe to break the Europeans' dependence on Putin and break our own dependence. It's definitely a win-win.
For these two parties, the Conservatives and the Liberals, their priority is the ultra-rich, not you.
Very well. We have a segment on energy pipelines. We will have the opportunity to come back to it. I want to, because there are people listening to us who are worried, there will be a negotiation with the Americans, that's obvious. What topic will you... Now, you're all going to tell me supply management, but I point out to you that Canada has given up market shares in the last 3 negotiations. These are market shares resulting in $450 million per year in losses for Canadian dairy producers. What is untouchable in a negotiation, Mr. Poilievre?
I will defend supply management. I will defend the French language. Our healthcare system, our legislative decisions, we will always be sovereign. And the way we will restore this Canadian sovereignty is by strengthening our economy. We need to reduce red tape by 25% for our businesses. We need to reduce taxes on housing construction, labor, energy, and also the creation of products here in Canada.
Very well.
That's how we will be able to be more sovereign in the face of the Americans.
Supply management, I'm going to go around the table. Mr. Carney, supply management, it's nice to say it, but we've said it 3 times and haven't done it.
Well, it would be the first time I'd be at the table if I were elected. So
the Liberals are in power, you know.
I said several times at the start of my campaign, we have never succeeded in supply management, never in the French language, never in Quebec culture. We all agree, I believe. And we need to be like that with respect to the Americans. We need to be clear from the start.
That's good.
Where we disagree is the fact that Pierre Poilievre's statements, unfortunately, are about cutting healthcare. He has said it multiple times. You said it. Everyone knows you want to cut dental care, pharmaceutical science. You said it was a bad idea, but unfortunately also, Mr. Carney, his plan to balance the operating budget in 3 years means cuts of $43 billion.
I invite you to stay there. Next block, cost of living. Then we'll talk about tax cuts, and then we'll discuss your choices. And by the way, let's emphasize that none of you have submitted a financial statement and quantified your promises, which is a first. Mr. Blanchet, on supply management, you?
We have submitted a program, first thing. Second thing, it's not us who decide what's on the table. If Mr. Trump says, I want to talk about this, no one will be able to stop him from talking about it, from presenting his demands. We have never sacrificed the principle of supply management. The phrase is hollow. We have sacrificed parts, as you said, each time, which cost hundreds of millions each time. And Mr. Trump, all he wants is to open Wisconsin milk to the territory without protection on medications, without protection on growth hormones, without protection on antibiotics.
So what are you doing concretely?
We are clearly bringing back a law that everyone had approved. The Liberal Party, before Mr. Carney had approved, everyone here had approved. And then there were intrigues from unelected senators. There are unelected people who are taking a lot of rights in politics these days.
Okay, on that note, quickly, would a law protect better?
Yes, maybe I agree with this law. But my point is we need to invest in Canada. Our plan, which will be unveiled this weekend, will catalyze $500 billion of investment in Canada over the next 5 years. And it takes time for the negotiation with Mr. Trump.
I want us to listen together to a Stellantis worker. For him, this crisis with the Americans is very concrete. He just lost his job. He is unemployed. Let's listen to him.
I have been laid off by Stellantis because of the tariff war with the United States. How is your government going to stop Mr. Trump from attacking our industries one by one? And how are you going to protect our jobs?
Concrete measures. How to help these workers? Do you have proposals that are different? Mr. Poilievre.
Firstly, I have already announced a fund to help businesses keep jobs. By eliminating the GST on new homes, we will also create jobs for tradespeople at a time when they need to work very well, to create affordable housing.
Let's stay on the topic of workers, sir. If a company wants to sell cars in Canada, I will implement a law where it must have a factory in Canada. It must have a presence in Canada. We have a huge, important market. So if you want to sell here, you must have jobs here.
Very well.
And I must also add that the first thing Mr. Poilievre said when he became leader in 2022 was that he would cut contributions to employment insurance. So it's completely not credible that he will increase support for people when he promised to eliminate contributions.
Mr. Blanchet, for the workers, do you want us to bring back the pandemic wage subsidies?
The principle. Even before the start of the campaign, we had come back with that because the employment insurance system, to paraphrase Mr. Poilievre, is quite broken. It doesn't work well. People have difficulty accessing it. And I strongly disagree with Mr. Carney's proposal to say, we will invest money in vocational training. Did you lose your job? We will train you, and then you will try other things for 5 years. I'm not sure that's a good plan. The principle of the wage subsidy, which everyone agreed on at the time, those who were there, was to maintain the employment link by giving the money to the employer, who would keep the employee, pay the salary, be able to call them back, and not lose, as an employer, the skills and expertise they had developed with their employees during a transition period where there could indeed be temporary job losses, like the person we heard speaking at the time.
Mr. de Saulniers, yes?
Firstly, three things. All the revenue from our counter tariffs goes to the workers. Secondly, we have a strategic fund to manufacture in Canada for the automotive sector. It was for the automotive sector. And thirdly, our counter tariff system for the automotive sector, there is a $7 billion incentive to keep their production and workers here in Canada. It's absolutely huge. And the reason for all of this is to have bargaining power against Mr. Trump.
Mr. Roy, in conclusion as well, I think we need to encourage Canadians to buy cars made in Canada. That's why, as long as there are tariffs, we will remove the GST on cars and vehicles that are made here in Canada predominantly. That's convenient because my next, I think it's a good idea, and I say it. Parts should not be subject to counter tariffs, which allows companies to produce and sell more while the assembled cars. I agree with that approach.
70%, excuse me. It's this idea of removing the GST. Yes, there are many people who have copied it. There are many things that are found in several programs, but we'll come back to that.
You should be happy about that.
There are 70% of Canadians who say they are buying fewer American products. That's huge. You, the leaders, name me a made in USA product that you have left on the shelves previously. Strawberries. I buy them myself. It costs $6 per basket. So you don't buy strawberries anymore? No, I buy strawberries. Do you do your own shopping?
Yes, I do my shopping.
What product have you not bought, Mr. Carney? You still, no more wine, no more American alcohol, all that. Okay. Mr. Singh?
I do my grocery shopping myself too, and I also do I cook at home as well. So there are several products among the fruits. We have many apples in Canada.
Do you make the effort?
Yes, I made the effort with the apples, with the fruits we make with strawberries. The strawberries that made in Windsor.
Strawberries. It's everyone eats strawberries.
I mentioned strawberries because I buy them myself. But unfortunately, Mr. Carney, I think you don't.
I'm in a different position. This is truly a delightful conversation.
But for me, it's beef. I love beef, and I buy Canadian beef. And it's the best beef in the world. So I never buy American strawberries either.
Quebec organic beef isn't bad either.
Okay, next topic. We'll go eat one day. Very well. It's nice what's happening here. Next topic, cost of living.
He could manage our money better.
We're quite in misery right now.
I'm waiting for him to try to get our budget back on track,
while maintaining the same quality of service.
Inflation. To lower taxes.
I have a good salary, but it's difficult to pay for living, for our daycare, for our child, and just everything.
It's expensive to get an education.
Groceries keep going up.
The middle class is suffering. The poor are even worse off.
We are retired, and we're counting our pennies.
I feel like we're getting poorer.
I feel like we're not very engaged. The young population, everything related to access to property, the cost of living, what's coming for us, the next generation.
What's coming for us, the next generation? I'll give you some numbers very quickly. The price of houses, I won't be announcing anything new to anyone. I won't be teaching anyone anything. In Montreal, it has doubled between 2015 and 2025. It has increased remarkably in Toronto and Vancouver as well. My question, you have first 35 seconds before the open debate, how to improve access to property, for example, for this young woman we just heard or a young family. Mr. Blanchet, first response.
Clearly, it's in access to initial capital. There are other measures, once again, related to the GST that are interesting. It's in access to capital for the down payment because my children cannot buy a house. They are all young adults who have jobs or who most of them have very interesting jobs. It is essential that we give them this helping hand with public funds, knowing that it can prove to be very costly. And it's not during a crisis by cutting state revenues that we will achieve this. Another element that seems important to me is to start from the basics, reducing speculation on house values. We start with student housing, social housing, affordable housings. 2, lower. Provide a low-cost offer for many people, reduce the pressure in the residential sector so that everyone can manage.
Thanks. Mr. Poilievre, 35 seconds.
I stand with you, those who struggle to buy groceries, or young people who cannot buy a house after a decade of liberal inflation, where liberal policies have increased the cost of living to the highest in over 40 years. I will cut your taxes for average workers by 15%. We will remove the GST on new homes, and encourage municipalities to speed up construction so that young people can still buy a house and fulfill the Canadian dream.
Mr. Carney.
To address the cost of living, and it is a crisis, we need to have more money in the pockets of Canadians and all of Canada. That means more money with a tax reduction for the middle class, which is almost $825, reducing the GST on first homes, increasing competition. All of Canada, meaning dental care, medical insurance, childcare, and a strong increase in housing, doubling the housing construction rate here in Canada with a plan.
Very well. Thank you. Mr. Singh, 35 seconds.
Yes, thank you. So first, when I talk with people and we discuss the cost of living, 2 things are crucial. One is the cost of groceries. 2, the cost of housing. Regarding the cost of groceries, it's the big grocery companies that are ripping you off. We've seen this with the price of bread, with the prices of meat. They raise the prices and rip people off. So we will cap the prices on essential groceries. We will stop the real estate giants from buying affordable houses and apartments. We will stop them from doing that. We are here for you, and you need help.
Thank you, sir. We built 245,000 houses and homes in 2024. You all promised to massively increase the pace. The Liberal Party, 500,000, you say. The NDP, you are at 600,000 per year. Mr. Singh, you start this open debate. Do houses fall from the sky or what?
We have a clear plan for how we can achieve that. Firstly, we do not sell our federal land. We keep it and build affordable housing, 100% affordable housing. We train workers in Canada. We create housing. But we also need to keep housing affordable. And unfortunately, with these two other parties, they have allowed wealthy investors to buy affordable housing. And we no longer have affordable housing. That is a big problem. Keeping housing affordable and building more housing.
But it puts us on some paths that could serve everyone. Firstly, I will speak for Quebec. There are hundreds of thousands of housing units behind schedule compared to demand. And we don't even have the human resources to build them. However, there are initiatives being taken, such as small housing, social housing, modular housing, and manufactured housing that allow for more production faster, with fewer resources, and also cheaper to accommodate as many people as possible. But I'm eager to see the financial frameworks because the Conservatives want to cut. We will also need to cut expenses somewhere to the same extent. The Liberals want to cut revenues, but increase spending. It's a magic trick that many people have tried. No one has ever succeeded. Need to see financial frameworks, see all platforms.
I will come back to the financial frameworks in a second. Mr. Carney, 500,000 homes?
Yes, we need to start them so that the housing market functions much better. With reductions in municipal fees, we will cut municipal fees in half. But we propose to have a new institution, Maison Canada, which will build affordable homes using wood from Quebec, wood from British Columbia, Canadian wood, and new Canadian technology. We are going to create a new industry.
But how? Can you say 500,000? I could say 800,000, 400,000.
There are 35 seconds we need to add. The financing of $25 billion for affordable developers and $10 billion for the...
Mr. Poilievre, you do not quantify your goal of 500,000.
Yes, Wam, we will quantify it in our electoral platform, which will be presented in a few days. But Mr. Carney, you are repeating exactly the same electoral promises that Justin Trudeau has been repeating for 10 years. During this Liberal era, when you were his economic advisor, the cost of housing doubled.
I was the governor of the Bank of England during that time.
And you inflated housing prices there, too. You had a terrible record in England, inflating real estate prices there, too. But the problem is that the Liberals want to build bureaucracy. We keep hearing about billions for a new department. We don't need more civil servants. We need more front doors for young families.
But the
problem, if I may complete that, the reason housing is so expensive today is taxes, levies, and bureaucracy. I will eliminate the GST on new homes, encourage municipalities to release land, and speed up permits so we can build your home.
I know after Mr. Carney, yes.
Let's talk about records. Mr. Poilievre, you were the housing minister in the past.
Yeah, sure.
And how many houses did you build? I can help you.
More than 200,000?
6 houses compared to the other 6 houses. We can't believe...
You asked me the question. I can answer the question that was asked.
200,000 or 6? You asked the question, I admit. I helped him with the answer because he answered it.
Can I answer? It was 200,000 that year, and the cost of an average house was 450,000. So thank you very much for reminding everyone of my record. It's a very good record.
In conclusion, and during the 10 years of the Conservatives, the cost of rent doubled. The cost of houses doubled. After 10 years of the Conservatives, doubled. And then, with the Liberals too, the cost of rent doubled. The cost of houses doubled. And unfortunately, Mr. Carney profited from the housing crisis when he was president of Brookfield Investments. It's a company that profits from the housing crisis by buying real estate, affordable buildings, and then they tripled the rent.
Mr. Carney?
Okay. Mr. Poilievre's approach is that everyone has their choice. Every crisis, the COVID crisis, he says, okay, cut taxes, cut red tape. This crisis, the most serious crisis of our lives, cut taxes, cut red tape. In a crisis, what you have to do that to a certain extent, but the government must act. You need to have catalytic capital. And with a small amount of catalytic capital from the government of Canada, we can create standard private investments and a new Canadian industry.
Mr. Blanchet and then Mr. Poilievre.
Another proposal that I find interesting from the PCHQ is to allow parents who have money in retirement savings plans to withdraw the money tax-free to contribute to the down payment for their children's home purchases. This is not 25 or 50, or $500 billion that will need to be taken out. It's not about cutting civil servants. It's an existing resource that depends on a healthy agreement between parents who want, like me, to help their children without state money, with simply a tax measure, and favorable to retirees who want to help their children. Isn't this a more concrete measure than programs we know nothing about, which will be released at the end of the campaign, and until further notice, without a financial framework?
Yes. I return to a second conclusion, Mr. Poilievre, because you had a discussion with Mr. Carney.
Yes, but Mr. Carney, in 2020 and 2021, you said that inflation was not going to happen and that it would have been a good thing if it did. You are quoted in the media. You even advised Justin Trudeau to print the money that caused our inflation crisis. You are, just like Justin Trudeau, you have exactly the same politics, the same approach. We need change. And you, Mr. Carney, you are not change.
You represent the interests of the wealthy.
Mr. Carney.
Mr. Poilievre is not Justin Trudeau. Neither am I. Okay? This election, the question, who will succeed and who will face Mr. Trump?
It's still the same parties, the same ministers, the same caucus, the same ideology, the same hostility towards Quebec values. Just because you change the leader doesn't mean the philosophy you've contributed to will transform overnight.
You all propose more or less tax cuts. We will see them quickly. Significant cuts. First day, Mr. Carney, on the campaign, Mr. Poilievre, for a long time, you've been proposing tax cuts for a couple earning $90,000. This means, as we will see, come on, $1,299 for the Conservatives, $1,011 for the NDP, $577 for the Liberals. The cost of your measures, that's really what I want to emphasize. Mr. Poilievre here, you are spending more on tax cuts than the NDP and the Liberals. You're arriving tonight empty-handed. As for the financial framework, it's still unprecedented. In any case, it's been a very long time since we've seen this at a leaders' debate, and we don't have the cost of your promises, so we don't know how you will finance your tax cuts, isn't it? And I choose my words carefully, totally irresponsible in front of the Canadian electorate. You say, Mr. Carney, that you love numbers. Where are your financial frameworks? Gentlemen?
I just said I will unveil our costed platform this weekend.
Why not before an event a week into the campaign?
There are 10 days left in the campaign. It's almost the same as Mr. Poilievre, I believe.
We are the only ones. It's the same for everyone.
There will be a costed figure there, and the operational budget will be balanced in 3 years. But at the same time, we will invest in Canada and Canadians.
Mr. Poilievre, where are you cutting? You are often asked this question. It comes back to the question I asked Mr. Carney. Where are your financial frameworks? What do you have to hide? Transfers to provinces reduced.
We are going to cut consultants now, believe it or not. You, a Canadian family, spend $1,400 in federal tax just to fund consultants, an increase of 100%. I am going to cut the consultants. Secondly, we will cut the cost of bureaucracy through attrition. There are 17,000 people who leave voluntarily. We don't need to replace each one. We can quietly reduce the cost. Thirdly, we will implement a dollar-for-dollar law. Every time we add a new dollar of spending, we will have to find an equal dollar of savings. And finally, my plan to unleash our natural resources, according to independent economists, will generate $70 billion more in revenue without increasing them.
Once again, you and Mr. Carney, you haven't aligned those figures in a Harry Potter budget. So on stage, yes.
We are the only party that has presented ways to increase revenue. We talked about ending loopholes, tax havens. We talked about strengthening the Canada Revenue Agency, getting money from companies that don't pay their fair share. This is not a tax increase. It's only the taxes they are supposed to pay. And the Canada Revenue Agency has said that this amounts to hundreds, tens of billions of dollars in additional revenue. Pierre Poilievre was honest with Canadians. He will cut health services, he will cut pensions, he will cut unemployment insurance. He said in 2022, when he became party leader. He said that, and so did Mark Carney. He clearly stated he will make massive cuts. We analyzed the cuts. It's $43 billion in cuts that Mark Carney will make the first time.
That's not correct at all. I said, okay, there is an operational amount in the budget. It's more than $200 billion per year. And this amount has increased by 9% year over year in recent years. We need to slow that down with the merging of subsidies with technology, with attrition, as Mr. Poilievre just mentioned. And we can do it, and we will do it, and it's necessary. But neither cuts nor reductions in transfers to individuals, nor reductions in transfers to provinces will result in less money.
Mr. Blanchet, do you believe that?
Yes, actually, I have a problem. I call them financial frameworks. Harry Potter budgets. You have to do magic. Here, we want to put more money, we want to cut. At the same time, we want to be more conservative than the conservatives. In the basic rules of economics, when threatened by a slowdown or a recession, that's when the state steps in. That's why we don't say lower taxes. We say make the right public investments. We want to increase our military spending. Now is the time to do it with Canadian companies. The Quebec tramway that Mr.
Poilievre did not want to redo?
Now is the time to do it. These are the types of investments. Health transfers so that, for example, Maisonneuve-Rosemont Hospital can be renovated. Now is the time to invest in public infrastructure with public money so that everyone can keep a job.
So no tax cuts.
There are no tax cuts per se. There is a budget, but it's necessary to keep things running for now. It's because they want to do one thing and its opposite, cut revenues, increase spending.
But we started with the cost of living.
Taxes need to be lowered for the cost of living.
What Mr. Blanchet says is true. You proposed the magic, Mr. Carney. Unfortunately, you said on February 16th. It's one of the rare moments. It was during February 16 with Rosemary Barton. You said you would cut spending. You said in the operating budget. And you said, that means you said at the same time, please, the transfers to individuals, he said that clearly.
No, not me. I have a question that people are asking. That's not correct.
Please, sir, take your time. You will have the opportunity to respond. The question that people are also asking, then they might have heard you, I see you, promising a family doctor for every Canadian, promising 35,000 nurses. Should the federal government continue to develop federal programs like dental care and eventually pharmacare? Or second option, give more money to the provinces for health care? Mr. Carney, your turn to discuss this. What do you do, other programs or more money to the provinces?
Firstly, the priority for the federal government is to invest and catalyze during the most severe crisis of our lives, and to catalyze private investment within our economy to create new and good jobs.
First thing, regarding the transfer to the provinces, Marcel, for healthcare, yes, there are limits to federal activity.
No new program for provincial healthcare. Mr. Blanchet, obviously
It's a bit obvious. All the premiers of the provinces and territories unanimously had requested a health transfer to reach 35% of health system expenses. Because, let me explain again. The federal government receives more money than it needs. Let's say it needs 10 units, it collects 12 in taxes and levies. Quebec needs 10 units, but it collects 8 in taxes and levies. The federal government takes its surplus and says, I will invest in your areas of jurisdiction. That was the policy of the Liberals. The Conservatives agreed with that, and the NDP are very zealous in interfering in the province's jurisdictions. Yet they have the expertise, the competencies. That's what the Constitution says. And it's the fastest way to provide care to people without interference.
Mr. Singh, you say we must interfere, we must multiply. These kinds of programs.
Not interference.
But own up to what you think.
I will explain. Absolutely, we must increase health transfers. Absolutely, to help the provinces. Moreover, we are in a crisis. The health crisis is a crisis here in Quebec, but across the country. What we must do is realize that a leader is someone who seeks solutions, not someone who looks for excuses. And for me, what we must do is invest more to solve the problems. We can work together with the provinces to hire more healthcare workers. We can work together to resolve these crises. The drug agency is something where we can gather the strength of the whole country to reduce the cost of medications. It's a strength, it's something that will help people.
Deciding the priorities of the provinces, of Quebec and the provinces. I don't come to your place to decide the color of the living room. Quebec, the provinces do what they want with their budget and the money that belongs to them. And that you refuse to give them.
Mr. Poilievre,
we can do two things. We can transfer the money, and at the same time, we can work together on other solutions. We can do both.
Mr. Poilievre, more money for the provinces or other federal programs.
I believe that the federal government taxes too much to deliver too little. That's the record after 10 years of the Liberals. The question for Canadians, you can't buy groceries or housing because it's too expensive after 3 Liberal terms. Will a 4th term fix things, or does there need to be change so you can have hope for a home, an affordable, good life?
Federal health program, I didn't understand your answer.
In health,
you keep the teeth.
We can cut.
No, that's not true. What I'm proposing there is a program that the federal government can coordinate. It's a blue seal, a license for doctors and volunteer nurses, similar to what we already have voluntarily in trades, to allow our immigrants to be licensed and work in our hospitals to reduce your wait times at hospitals.
I noticed that everyone agrees with health transfers. The question will become, is this what the 13 premiers, the 13 economies, because it's not one economy, the current Canada is 13 economies. Are these the requests that have been made to stop digging and to reduce the quality of services that go to citizens?
Very well. Next theme, and it might also, no pun intended, spark some flames. Energy and climate.
The carbon tax is supposed to be something that helps the environment. But now, what are we doing for the environment?
That worries me a little. Like, our planet is starting to die.
I really want to see someone who can prioritize climate change while also prioritizing Canada's economy.
We have real fears about a pipeline. The environmental consequences are very serious.
Even if for ecological reasons it's not the best solution.
I think we have to consider it.
There was a great project that was put in place, and then we dropped it.
A pipeline has a significant impact. We might have to make sacrifices if we want to be more independent.
Drill, baby, drill, advocated Donald Trump in the South. I have a very simple question for you, and I would appreciate a simple answer. You have 35 seconds, and then it will be an open debate. Do you want Canada to produce more oil? Yes or no? Mr. Singh?
I favor investment in clean energy, in renewable energy. So with our public money, I want to spend on a project like an electricity line across the country. We need renewable energies for the future. And that's where we can invest our public money.
So more or less oil or the same amount as currently. That's what people want to know. Do you want to increase oil production?
There are some measures that I am in favor of. I am in favor of investments in clean energy. I am in favor of having more investments to reduce our emissions.
We will return to this in the open debate. There is no more time, but the question I thought was very simple. Mr. Carney.
Yes, more oil in order to reduce our imports, especially our imports from the United States, a country that is now threatening us. But to do that, we need low-risk oil. It's clear that it's low risk here in Canada, low cost. It's almost more or less like that, but low carbon, because we need to be competitive in the long term. But then we must simultaneously have successful pipelines with carbon storage. This is very important for our competitiveness.
We will come back to that, Mr. Poilievre. Should we produce more oil in Canada?
Yes. And we need to be able to transport it by building pipelines. Unfortunately, the other parties have adopted an unconstitutional and anti-development law, C-69, which effectively bans oil and gas pipelines across Canada.
Fi and north-south. It's just a matter of logic. I am for less oil, but let's be careful, gradually. The person who authorized the reversal of Enbridge's Line 9B so that the oil consumed in Quebec comes from Western Canada. It was me when I was Minister of Environment. But I say we must gradually move away from oil because the costs per family are higher than all the horrible scenarios Mr. Poilievre mentions. The repair of damage due to climate change costs thousands of dollars per family per year. So we need to reduce. And we are opening a major energy project, the Green Energy Project of Quebec.
Thank you, Mr. Blanchet. I will ask you a question to start the debate. Mr. Carney, it has been exactly 17 years that the Liberals have been telling us that the only way to fight climate change is to put a price on carbon. Yes, with the carbon tax. There have been elections on this, there have been, etc. Yet now, the first day you come to power, you abolish the tax. What should Canadians understand? Is it that fighting climate change is no longer a priority for the Liberals?
No, it remains a priority. It is a priority for Canada. We talk a lot about diversifying our trade partners globally, okay? The European Union. We need to reduce greenhouse gases from manufacturing, energy, and all our products to access that market. But regarding the carbon tax, we have removed the consumer carbon tax, and that involves about a 6% reduction in greenhouse gases. We keep the carbon tax for major polluters and create a new market so that major polluters pay people at home to make eco-friendly decisions.
Mr. Poilievre, you remove this second carbon tax, the one on industries. You remove both you? Yes, there is no tax at all anymore, so there is no fight at all. There is no longer any incentive to consume less oil?
That's not true. There is already a cost associated when you use energy. But my approach is pragmatic. For example, the National Bank calculated that if we export our liquefied natural gas from Canada to India to replace coal, it can reduce emissions in India by 2.5 billion tons. That's 3 times the emissions of all of Canada, while bringing tens of billions of dollars here to Canada. The current Liberal laws block the construction of the necessary pipelines and gas liquefaction plants. For example, GNL Quebec is a project that would allow us to provide our energy to Europe profitably and break Europe's dependence on Putin. I want the money to be in the pockets of the welder in Saguenay and not in Vladimir Putin's war machine.
Mr. Blanchet, Mr. Carney's abolition of the carbon tax means that Canadians outside of Quebec will continue to receive compensation for several more weeks for a tax that has been abolished, which puts Quebec in a situation that could be considered unfair. What do you say, and what are you asking about this?
One more thing before, because I will finish with that. This could give Mr. Carney the opportunity to respond to me. Last year, Canada put $30 billion in public money into oil. Trans Mountain cost $40 billion. It took 9 years to build. This means that just these two elements alone account for $16 billion of Quebecers' money that has been put into oil. Do you want a major energy project with an obvious market, which is the American Northeast, that is not at all Republican? This is Quebec's major green energy project. Let's keep our money. Let's do our own project. Now, regarding the $3.7 billion, the federal government was reimbursing the carbon tax in advance for individuals. But now it cancels the carbon tax for after the election, yet still provides the reimbursement for an expense that people will not incur. And because Quebec is responsible enough to still have carbon pricing with California, we punish Quebecers by saying, you won't get a cent. We take $800 million from the pockets of Quebecers and put it into the pockets of Canadians. That's $100 per person, including the cost of encouraging babies in Quebec. That's a huge amount of money being taken from Quebecers to make it 6 days before the election, an electoral gift to Canadians by the New Democrats.
Mr. Carney, on this matter, isn't there an injustice?
No, it's not an injustice. Quebec is a pioneer when it comes to carbon markets. That's clear. So we are going to pay $800 million, firstly. And secondly, Canadians, whether in Quebec or British Columbia, have paid the carbon tax, and consequently, they receive the rebate, and all Canadians, including Quebecers, will... What rebate do we receive? That's interesting. Will receive the tax cut for the middle class. That's because we have made the reimbursement. It's the principle. I haven't spoken in these debates.
Yes, you will speak in a second. It's just for the sake of clarity for the people who are listening to us. Which reimbursement are you talking about? I don't understand.
It's the rebate. The rebate because with... No, not in Quebec.
Okay, that's it. But in Quebec, the price of gas is a bit higher considering the...
There is a principle of making whole those who pay the carbon tax. It's only in a fair manner.
Europe, Quebec, and California have a carbon pricing system designed to encourage companies to reduce their carbon emissions, and it's about 9 cents per liter of gasoline. It's much cheaper than the cost of climate change, infinitely cheaper.
To return to the debate, we're talking about a climate crisis. The climate crisis is not something that will hit hard in the future. It's now. Now we have already experienced the reality of the climate crisis. We have already seen here in Quebec extreme temperatures, wildfires, floods. So, as Mr. Blanchet said, I agree, the cost of the climate crisis is too high, so we must act. I spoke with a mother in the past before I became a father. She said that she is afraid for her children when they play outside because due to the wildfires in British Columbia, the children cannot breathe the air. And now that people talk to me, I remember the same concern from 2 years ago that with the wildfires, people cannot breathe the air. So it's clear that we must act, and we must protect our environment. We must protect our children.
Mr. Samka Poilievre, you are very clear. You say that a pipeline is needed. If, despite all your efforts, the indigenous nations say no, do you impose it? If, despite all your efforts, Quebec says no, do you impose it?
But first of all, we must not assume that because the majority of Quebecers want a pipeline, according to the polls. According to the polls, Quebec, listen, there is no social acceptability for the status quo. Thank you very much for overturning, nothing.
That is the emptiest phrase of the debate.
There is no social acceptability for the status quo. When it rains, the sun doesn't shine.
That means nothing.
I will tell you what it means. Now, Quebecers who even buy oil from Alberta, it has to go through the United States, giving power to Donald Trump over our own energy. You say you are for sovereignty? I am for economic and energy sovereignty, and it requires a pipeline across Canada, and Quebecers agree with that. You are bringing up a scarecrow that never exists.
The Americans are going to damage their own economy to that extent by saying, okay, we are stopping the trade of a product on which we make a huge profit. That's an extraordinary argument. Then you will tell me how much your pipeline across all of Canada will cost, because 1,600 kilometers for Trans Mountain cost 40 billion. And there you should make one of 4,600 kilometers without an investor, with Europe not wanting it. Mr. Poilievre and then Mr. Carney.
Just to clarify, I will never subsidize pipelines or gas pipelines. It's not necessary. They are extremely profitable. The only reasons why it's expensive now is because there are rules and laws that prevent construction with bureaucracy. We will remove the bureaucracy, and the private sector will do it as it does around the world.
I ask you the question again. I ask again, if the indigenous nations, despite all your good efforts, I'm talking about Mr. Carney, you who want a pipeline, refuse. What do you do?
Refuse, you mean 100% against? Because the majority of projects...
We have seen in history that we should not have something if people refuse.
He cannot say that because it is not his will.
Sir, Mr. Poilievre, if there are groups like indigenous nations or provinces that refuse, what do you do?
At the same time, there are others who are in favor. I will give you an example. Mr. Walker Carney opposed the pipeline in the West that would have allowed us to sell our oil in Asia, the Northern Gateway. 80% of the First Nations were in favor. There were 20% against. In this case, I think we should favor the majority and also allow companies to pay part of their taxes directly to the First Nations to combat poverty with industry and production.
That's common sense.
Mr. Carney, on that note, would you be ready to legally impose a project?
Targeting people's rights is unfair. May I respond? Okay. Never imposed, but a few points. Firstly, our relations with the Americans have changed everything. So imports from the United States and geography, as Mr. Poilievre just said, the pipelines, they are problems. They are national security issues for us. We must act. Okay, first point. Secondly, on March 21st, there was a meeting of the premiers, all the premiers in Ottawa, and we agreed, we all the premiers signed an agreement to have an energy corridor, including oil, natural gas, clean energy, and critical minerals and metals. And with that, and with a process with Indigenous leaders, we could have a solution to this problem. And this is an example of leadership. It's an example of bringing leaders together to achieve a national goal. We need to do more than that during this time of crisis.
But I ask you again, if ever there are indigenous nations...
I said no.
So you say no, we forget the project.
We cannot restart the project. You are bringing us back to Lee's dictatorship.
I will ask another question about the environment.
The question is it...
You said you are pragmatic. Do you agree that it is not pragmatic to continue subsidizing oil companies with billions of dollars? It is not pragmatic. Do you agree?
I agree with that. Yes, absolutely.
Do you commit to stopping the subsidies to these companies?
Absolutely.
That's why, my friends, you need the New Democrats. There you go. We secured a commitment today.
It's not a new commitment. That's why we need the New Democrats. It's not a new commitment, honestly. It's absolutely clear.
In mid-February, I believe in British Columbia, you did like all the great Canadian leaders. You said one thing in English, which was that if necessary, you would use the executive emergency powers to enforce. You said it, I heard it myself yesterday, to force pipelines across Canada, including through Quebec.
No. That wasn't it? I'll let you listen to it. It'll be nice. Like that. We've become buddies. No.
With Mr. Roy, 2 days later, you said never. I will force that. It wasn't rules that prevented the pipeline from passing through Quebec. It was social acceptability. The Quebecers said no.
Mr. Carney, respond. Then I will have a question.
I agree with that, but it's the use of emergency powers at the federal level. It's for federal approval. But you need to have approval down the line, for example, here in Quebec, from the provinces and the support of Indigenous peoples. That's Canada. Canada operates like that. But another point, if I may say, they started having disagreements on cooperation with the provinces in order to have a project, an evaluation, and that will accelerate major projects. Very well.
Mr. Blanchet, you said there's a greater chance that I will sign the Canadian Constitution than say yes to a pipeline project. But how can one paint themselves into a corner by saying never, ever, if it worsens relations with the Americans? Indeed, the pipeline you reversed goes through the United States. If what we import from the United States becomes more difficult to import, why? Tie our hands?
Mr. Trump's threat is extremely serious, but he will not self-destruct the American economy, and the Americans consider Canadian oil to be in their backyard, quite simply. Furthermore, as I was saying, there is no rule that prevents the circulation of oil or a pipeline. The Quebecers did not want it. The federal government or Mr. Carney says, I will respect Quebec's environmental regulations, but he cannot impose deadlines on Quebec's environmental regulations. So there are elements that are just inconsistent. I will also return to the matter of granting leaves. It remains a no, because Quebec is the best place in the world to develop. A clean energy superpower with a huge market directly to the south, without even asking Canada's permission. Why would we invest our money in oil that has no economic benefits for Quebec, except to increase what we pay at the pump?
2 quick points. To close the block, Mr. Singh, I will give you the floor. You are slightly behind, but just slightly. Tramway and Third Link, we're talking about the environment. We're also talking about transportation. So, Tramway, Third Link, do you fund both or just one of them?
The answer is simple for me. It's the tramway, yes. We support public transportation, and we are against projects that are bad for the environment.
So you are against the Third Link?
Exactly. We are against the Third Link. We are for the tramway. We are creating a solution to tackle the climate crisis. And something that can help our economy is to invest massively in public transportation, helping municipalities, helping provinces, working together with provinces with transfers to better fund these projects. We need these projects at this time. They can create good jobs, and at the same time, they can also reduce emissions.
Mr. Poilievre, tramway or Third Link? Possibly both, or just the Third Link?
Just the Third Link. We have to make choices. And I want to speak to the people in the regions tonight. The other parties are against the Third Link, and they want to ban gasoline cars. It's not practical. In the regions of our country, we need a car, we need a truck to live in the regions of Quebec. I will reverse that. You will be able to keep your car, and we will build highways and bridges so you can live a good life in the regions.
Climate denial is dangerous. Both Quebec projects, the Quebec government wants the tramway. The city of Quebec wants the tramway. The federal responsibility is to provide the money to the Quebec government so there can be a tramway. For now, if there can be a Third Link, we have no idea what it is, where it is, when it is, how much it costs, or what color it will be. We cannot be for or against something that doesn't exist.
There are these 3 debates that you need to express your opinion on regarding the Third Link. You
remind me of my seniority.
Mr. Carney.
I could quickly support the tramway. Yes, because there is a project. We support it. And like Mr. Blanchet, there is no project at this time concerning the Third Link.
But I think the Third Link will be blue. The color will be blue. Yes, okay.
Should we, I'm adding one more. I don't have time, but I'm adding one anyway. Should we accelerate the development of nuclear energy in this country?
Yes, absolutely. For several reasons.
Everywhere, Quebec, Ontario, around the world.
It's the choice of each Quebec and the provinces. But we have a great advantage here in Canada. We have rhenium. That's one of the advantages. We have major nuclear companies, including Candu and Westinghouse, and then Chemical, and the small technologies. You say yes? Absolutely, yes. It's a great opportunity.
I understand that there are countries in the world that need nuclear energy. I don't believe that Canada needs nuclear energy. I won't meddle in their affairs. Quebec doesn't want it, that's clear. Don't make up a survey saying that Quebecers want nuclear energy.
Quebecers don't want it in Quebec. A review at Hydro-Quebec.
They are doing Quebecers don't want it. It's part of my heavy past. I'm also the one who managed the closure of Gentily.
Yes, but we don't have to reopen it, as you know.
As a national project, I support an electric line to connect clean energy in Quebec to the rest of Canada, energy in Manitoba, energy in British Columbia. We can be a power across, it's something I do not support. I prefer renewable hydroelectric energy.
Mr. Poilievre, nuclear?
In favor. It's one of the best constant sources of electricity. It provides 60% of the electricity in Ontario. Unfortunately, bureaucracy slows down construction without adding safety. I will remove politicians from the Nuclear Safety Commission and allow scientists to do the work so that we can add this energy source without. Next topic, I believe, eternal radioactive. There are radioactive wastes. Yes. Next topic.
Topic, immigration and its impact.
Let us now discuss the next important topic, immigration and foreign affairs.
The issues surrounding immigration that are also related to Donald Trump.
Immigration at the moment is complicated. I would like to stay if I find a good job.
We need to take care of the newcomers, especially because people are arriving in large numbers, but they don't have jobs.
Should we let them in or not?
But why not? If we have the capacity to welcome them, why not welcome them?
In your opinion, should we accept everyone who tries to come here?
Of course not. In the United States, there is a law. In Canada, there is another law as well. We must respect the law, my friend.
We know there are more than 500,000 Haitians currently residing in the United States who are at risk of losing their temporary protection. I'll show you some figures. Since then, as of April 13th, 1,411 have presented themselves at the border post. That's more than in the entire month of March, which was already double that of February and much more than January. So it's increasing. Very simple question. Round table, 35 seconds. Do you accept the Haitians or not? Mr. Carney.
First of all, it's a question of humanity. It's a human issue. They are people, some of the most vulnerable in North America. But there are limits. We must be humane but realistic. Canada cannot accept everyone. And we have an agreement, an arrangement with the Americans, the safe third country agreement. And in this agreement, we must, or we will, send back most of the asylum seekers.
So we send most of them back to the United States.
Yes.
Mr. Blanchet.
The rules are not dependent on the origin of the applicant. We cannot say, I'll come back to this later. We cannot say, we will welcome the Haitians. We won't take people from Venezuela. You won't ask for that here. However, the rules must be the same for everyone. That said, I have a sensitivity because I regularly meet with representatives of the Haitian community. They have French roots. Integration in Quebec is much easier. If the rules allow it and the financial capacity of the Quebec state allows it, I have a sympathy. But the rules must always apply. And Quebec's capacity to welcome is seriously at its limit.
The formal rule currently, if it applies, is indeed to send them back because they are in a safe third country, which is the United States. Mr. Singh.
In general, we must do our fair share. It's a question of humanity. It's a question of compassion for the people who are listening to this program. Ça passe comme oye for the Haitians. We love the fact that our country is based on immigration. It's something important. We must have an immigration number that meets our needs. But if we can welcome people, yes, we must welcome them. If we cannot, we do not want to give someone a bad life in Canada, in Quebec. So we must have the capacity to welcome people. But yes, we need immigration.
Mr. Poilievre, do we say yes or no to them?
Is the question precise?
The question is, the Haitians, for example, who who arrive at the border, do we welcome them or not? Because we have the right to send them back given the agreement.
Unfortunately, we must send them back because immigration must go through normal entry points. Excuse me. Quebecers are extremely generous and welcoming. They welcome my wife, as Mr. Blanchet pointed out, but the Liberal government has abused the generosity of Quebecers with an immigration system out of control and a population that has grown 3 times faster than the number of houses built in Canada. This has caused a housing crisis. Quebec is at the breaking point. We must give power to the Quebec government over Immigra, the selection of temporary immigrants in the spirit of Brian Mulroney. And we must eliminate fraud among asylum seekers to restore numbers that are realistic for housing, health, and jobs.
I must respond here because what Mr. Poilievre is saying is blaming immigrants for the fault of conservative and liberal governments that have not invested enough resources, have not built enough housing, and have not welcomed people in a proper manner.
They haven't welcomed many recently.
This is not something we should blame on immigrants. It's wrong to do that.
Very well.
That's not true.
Quebec is now requesting, given the number of applicants and temporary immigrants on the ground, $500 million for social assistance to asylum seekers in 2024. Mr. Poilievre, we begin the open debate. Are you sending the check to Quebec, $500 million?
We must work with the Quebec government to repair the damage that the Liberals have done with an immigration system that is out of control. And also, I must say that I reject the Quebec initiative, a Liberal policy to increase Canada's population to 100 million people. That is extreme. I think we should return to an immigration level that ensures our population never grows faster than the number of houses, jobs, or health services.
Mr. Carney, are you giving more money to Quebec? And in general, how far are you cutting the number of immigrants in this country?
Yes, well, we start with the second part. We need to have a cap on all types of immigration for a period to increase our capacity to accommodate. This includes housing, language, training here in Quebec, and the social safety net. And in this circumstance, we must...
The targets announced by your predecessor, by Mr. Trudeau, you are lowering them even more. He had set targets for the next 3 years.
There are challenges here in Quebec, for example, regarding temporary immigrants, temporary workers. It's a matter of distribution, if I can put it that way, of workers, for example, in central Quebec. There is a shortage of workers, but we maintain the cap or the level for a period of a few years, probably, in order to increase our capacity.
Mr. Singh, are we reducing the intake of immigrants in general in Canada?
Instead of giving a yes or no to this question, I want to base the answer on facts. It's clear that we need immigration. There is no doubt. For the farmers here in Quebec, when I talk to the farmers, they say, yes, we need immigrants to do the work on our farms. When we talk to small and medium-sized businesses, they say, yes, we need immigrants. So what is the level of immigrants? That's a good question. We will base the numbers on a panel of experts who analyze what our needs are, what our capacities are. And then we will establish a number that is based on facts. But we don't want to fall into a trap where we scare people about immigrants, where we blame immigrants. We don't need to do that. We need to have an approach based on facts, based on needs.
Mr. Blanchet.
Temporary foreign workers, temporary as the word suggests, are a separate category. Foreign students are a separate category, essential to the network of higher institutions in Quebec and in many respects in Canada. Unfortunately, it is used indirectly for asylum requests in a structured way with organized crime and smugglers. Let's set that aside. Immigration is not, excuse the expression, the importation of vulnerable labor, because we need people. These are people in distress whom we must welcome according to our capacities. Quebec's capacity is largely exceeded. We are not able to integrate people into the labor market. We are not able to recognize...
We need to reduce the targets accordingly.
Quebec must be able to establish for itself what these targets are and the types of immigration. And a clear element as well, the federal parliament, at the initiative of the Bloc, passed a motion that required the federal government to consult the provinces for 100 days to establish with the provinces the number of immigrants that would be welcomed. That motion is still valid. No one can decide for Quebec how many people we are capable of welcoming, properly, successfully, and with great success.
Another rare moment. I completely agree with Mr. Blanchet regarding temporary workers. It was something that was an abuse of power, and we must eliminate the use of workers who were exploited by large companies. That is something that is bad.
The Century Initiative, in 3 seconds, the Century Initiative was 100 million immigrants to Canada before the end of the century. Dominic Barton himself told me in a parliamentary committee that they absolutely did not take Quebec's specificity into account. And one of the two co-authors of the Century Initiative and the $100 million has become a close advisor to Mr. Carney.
Oh, my God.
Mr. Carney, indeed, that man is part of other topics. But do you think there has been a drift in the immigration system in Canada over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years?
Yes, the system is not working, especially after the pandemic. Our population has grown almost up to about 3% because of immigration.
Normally, in France, it takes 6 months. In Germany, 8 months. Why does it take at least 3 years for asylum seekers and refugee applicants in Canada?
Because Canada stubbornly wants to welcome more people than it can handle in terms of processing the applications and distributing them proportionally across the territories and provinces according to their population.
I spoke with the workers.
Answer instead.
I spoke with the workers in the sector at the federal level, and they said there's a lack of resources, a lack of workers to handle the number of people. It's impossible for people to have to wait 3 years for an answer.
But that's not the main issue, Mr. Poilievre.
So we need to have more people at the level to meet the needs, to have people who can say yes or no or provide an answer. Because it's so unacceptable that people have to wait so long.
Mr. Poilievre, can this problem be solved?
Yes. Will you hire the people needed?
Listen, it's about efficiency. By refusing to invite false asylum seekers here who cause bottlenecks, we can reduce the demand for case processing. Also, by processing the last cases, first it sends those who are not real refugees elsewhere and discourages new non-genuine refugees from coming to Canada again.
Have you always been this strict with non-genuine refugees, everyone?
Yes, but my point of view is that if someone is in danger in their home country, they should be able to make the decision to come to Canada. But if they are not refugees, for example, we saw the situation in Mexico where people came here without ever needing to be refugees, and it caused a backlog in the system. So by fixing that problem, we will ensure that real refugees can come here and have their lives saved by the generosity of Canadians. But at the same time...
How do we distinguish the real from the fake if our system can't examine the files?
That's it, the system. For example, the visa from Mexico was one of the causes of the problems. By eliminating these types of entry points, it's a solution, sir.
Carney, is it acceptable in Canada to wait 3 years for people to wait?
No, it is not acceptable. It is not humane for asylum seekers. It indicates that there is a problem with the productivity of this department. It's about resources, but at the same time, it's about productivity.
Why not slow down in a compassionate way? Why not slow down the pace of intake until we succeed and have a public service in immigration then that manages to process cases, but in a few months, we are maintaining the pace much too high and refusing to implement the measures that will allow us to succeed properly. People for economic reasons or people who are in distress, because it's true that there are people in distress, arrive here They get lost in the system because we don't manage the cases, and it's very harmful to Quebec.
Conclusion, Mr. Carney, quickly.
I more or less agree with that. But as you just said, we need to be neutral. We need to be in a neutral manner, a fair manner.
Very well, sir. I want to save time to talk about two important issues: international aid, Ukraine, Gaza. So I will continue. We understood your positions on immigration. The question is simple. Should we cut or not international aid to the country? I will show you some figures. We give $2.1 billion to Ukraine. Currently, it's the largest expenditure for Canada, but we give to Ethiopia. We give to Haiti. The list is very long. We could have made a list throughout the entire studio. Mr. Poilievre, you say that we need to cut international aid. What are you cutting? Are you cutting Ukraine, Ethiopia, Haiti?
No, I will start by cutting China. The Liberal government gave $250 million to the China Infrastructure Bank to build pipelines, highways, and other infrastructure to promote the expansion of Beijing's empire. I do not believe that this is a good use of taxpayers' money. Also, we have seen UNRWA, an organization in Gaza which participated or whose employees participated in the attacks of September 7th. I do not believe we should be funding these kinds of things. The aid we provide should be directly to people in need and not to multinational bureaucracies, dictatorial governments, or terrorists.
Let's talk about Gaza. Currently, Doctors Without Borders today said it was worse than ever. A mass grave, I quote, a Doctors Without Borders Gaza. If you cut UNRWA, which is perhaps an imperfect organization, and there have been several studies, but if you cut that, how does Canada help the Palestinians?
With non-profit groups that will deliver services directly to the citizens, to the people on the ground. That's how it's going to, because it's wasteful, the money doesn't reach the population. You cut everything to UNRWA.
Okay. I start by saying, if there is someone who has a problem in any organization, we must investigate that immediately. But what you said about us is disgusting. It's the only organization that provides aid to people on the ground. And you called the entire organization, a terrorist organization. It's disgusting. It's unacceptable to say such things. It promoted hatred. It's not acceptable to do that. Mr. Carney, regarding the Palestinians, let's stay on this topic, on general international aid. Do you continue to give to UNRWA?
Yes. We are in a situation where an immediate ceasefire is necessary. We need the return of all hostages and the resumption of humanitarian aid. And at this moment, we have $100 million from the Canadian government ready to be provided for humanitarian aid in Gaza with the organizations operating there. And that is key. I share Mr. Singh's view. I agree with Mr. Singh. There are only a few groups operating in Gaza at the moment.
Mr. Blanchet, on that?
A very particular situation. In Canada and Quebec, the Jewish community is a victim of Islamist radicals. In Gaza, the Palestinians, Hamas is a terrorist group to be neutralized. The Palestinians are victims of terrible violence from the Israeli regime. We must help people in distress there and elsewhere. The best way to have international aid that is not military is for people to live better where they are. And it's not true that Gaza is going to become a Mar-a-Lago for Americans who want to have fun on the Mediterranean. Let's work with existing organizations, but we need to monitor where the money goes. We need to know where the money is going. The portion of the money that is diverted by Hamas, it might be a bit less true today, but it was enormous. It was a blackmail that caused immense suffering to the Palestinians. And they are the ones we need to help.
Okay. International aid. So you three on that front, we continue. Mr. Poilievre, quickly, do you have an amount in mind for what you would cut from the international aid budget proportions?
We will target the waste we find in the program. We will conduct audits or identify examples like when UNRWA used funds for Hamas purposes. We will also find examples of waste on an international scale to reduce this cost. Because ultimately, we must not...
As a matter of fact, excuse me.
No, but it is not. It is a decision to protect Canadian taxpayers. We all agree that there is a lot of suffering here in Canada and Canadians cannot pay their bills. Ultimately, we must find savings to reduce the cost of living here in Canada.
Mr. Roy, I want to return.
We need to look at all departments to find these savings and protect our taxpayers.
I want to return to the question of Gaza.
Mr. Singh, we've covered that. I invite you to go ahead.
It breaks the heart to see this. It breaks the heart to see innocent people killed. Mr. Carney, why don't you call things as they are? It's a genocide. People in Israel must have the country, the security. People in Palestine must have the country, the security. But what's happening is a genocide against the people in Palestine. Why don't we call it that?
The situation in Gaza, in the Middle East, is horrible. But I never use that word and politicize the situation there.
That's absolutely fine.
That was Mr. Carney's response. We understood your question very well. Mr. Singh, debate, identity, and sovereignty.
It would be good to put flags on our balconies to have pride in our country. I was quite surprised at how proud people were to have the flag.
We are Canadians. We will not be Americans. I think we will be more united. Seems to me that it's been a long time since I've seen that.
So yes, we've all noticed it across Canada. All the commentators, when we walk around, we feel it. There is a wave of patriotism in Canada, but we also see deep divisions. In the west of the country, Alberta is threatening to go its own way. Danielle Smith is giving the next Prime Minister 6 months to meet her demands. Otherwise, she foresees a crisis, and I quote her, an unprecedented national unity crisis. She said, in Quebec, the PQE is approaching power and still promises a referendum during your mandate, possibly. In the end, aren't we just as divided, or at least very divided, like the Americans? Round table, Mr. Poilievre first.
Unfortunately, there are divisions across Canada, all sorts of divisions. I believe it is a national government that has divided the people. Regions against each other, different groups against each other, wealth classes against each other. We need to unite Canada. We should come together around our common identity. This includes the French language, the English language, our military history, and the promise of Canada that everyone who works hard can have a good life with a nice home in a safe community. That is our identity to me.
Mr. Singh, isn't there a Canadian divide?
When I travel across the country, it seems to me there is an incredible unity and solidarity that I have seen. Canadians want to defend our country. They do not want to become the 51st state. They want to defend what is dear to us. And more, when I talk to people about the question of identity, people say, our identity is that we take care of each other. We have programs to take care of each other, like healthcare. We must defend them, meaning we must strengthen them, not cut them, not sacrifice them. So now is the time to unite people, to take this solidarity, to make things better for people.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Mr. Blanchet.
I feel like we've confused the necessity for all the people living on the current Canadian territory to become a single line, the small ones in front, the tall ones in the back, behind the federal government. And that gave us a single Canadian economy not long after. Mr. Trump's fear must be taken seriously. But instrumentalizing it in the name of nation building of a Canadian national construction in which Quebecers are expressly asked to consider their attachment to language or culture or their immigration model as frivolities. I strongly disagree because it is not necessary. The Quebec reference is also economic, and it deserves to be respected among equals.
Mr. Carney, is there a Canadian divide?
There is always a risk, but I believe that at this moment, Canadians are coming together and they want to unite. They want a positive agenda. There is solidarity here. Health is a right here in Canada, not a big business like in the United States. We value diversity here, and we value judicial independence and opportunity. The opportunities now for Canada are enormous because we are all in the same boat.
Thank you. So, open debate, Mr. Blanchet. How can one think that a Quebec alone, thus eventually independent, could be stronger against Trump compared to currently with the entire Canadian ensemble with Canada?
Does Canada need to be a province of Mexico to ally with Mexico against the United States? Quebec doesn't need more. We are not in that debate this week, but Quebec will not need to be a Canadian province to speak with its own voice. Quebec's economy is generally doing well, but its economy is different from the Canadian economy. And the announcements made so far were about Ontario's automobile industry, steel for Ontario's automobile industry, Ontario's banking system, Toronto banks to finance Western Oil. That's what it was. Essentially, that's what it was. While the counter tariffs on aluminum in Quebec are very harmful to the industry because people are paying to retrieve their own aluminum processed in the United States. Very bad idea. But the forestry industry, for example, has paid $2 billion in countervailing duties to the United States. They have received nothing except phone calls and lawsuits from Canada against the Americans since 2017. But as soon as the automotive industry trembled, $2 billion was put on the table by Mr. Carney, who has already designated himself as the future prime minister and negotiator even before we had an election. So the economy of Quebec is different. Shouldn't Quebecers consider ensuring they have a strong collaborative voice? I have reached out since the beginning of the campaign, specifically to Mr. Carney, never received a call, never had a willingness to collaborate that would ensure with Quebec on board in the negotiation. Even Canada would be stronger.
Mr. Carney, isn't there a risk that if we save, as was the case with the automotive industry in Ontario at the time, it might be at the expense, because the funds are not endless, at the expense of saving other industries elsewhere in the country? If we put all our eggs on the side of the automotive industry.
For example, our counter tariffs for the aluminum sector, no, it's not harmful. It's not harmful at all. It's 30.
We import beer cans from the United States that were made with our aluminum. We pay a tariff on the return of the can instead of creating an exception.
No, that's not correct at all. Sorry. The counter tariffs for the aluminum sector are $30 billion. The counter tariffs for the automotive sector are less than $8 billion US. It's a huge difference because the aluminum sector, there are several reasons, but our counter tariffs it's not for Quebec, but for the workers there, are much larger.
Approximately $50 billion. I don't know when, and I especially don't know when the industry will recover them. It goes into a common pool.
We use the counter tariffs for...
Why was it $2 billion for the automobile right from the start, Big Bang? $2 billion for automobiles because we shake in our boots when the automobile industry isn't doing well. But aluminum hasn't received any money, hasn't been supported. There's no effort in processing. There's no wage subsidy program in case of temporary job loss. The forestry sector paid $2 billion. It received nothing from Ottawa. But when it's Ontario, things move quickly. I say I agree for Ontario. I agree. But Quebec needs to get its share.
That's not right at all. The numbers are absolutely...
Explain that to me.
Your numbers are wrong.
Mr. Poilievre, on that note, is there a danger?
But he makes a point. He makes a point when he says that the weakness in our country right now threatens our unity. Your Liberal government for the past 10 years has the worst record on immigration The worst record on housing, the worst record on inflation, the worst record on crime. Aren't you embarrassed to ask Canadians for a fourth mandate after this worst Liberal record?
Mr. Carney?
I just arrived.
Same minister, same deputy, same advisor, same promise, same story.
Being Prime Minister for 1 month, we have an agreement with the provinces, we have an agreement with Australia, we have an agreement with France, we have an agreement with the United Kingdom, we have a negotiation for the next Prime Minister. We don't know. It's the decision of the people at home. We did all this during this period, and tax cuts and programs for workers who are more affected by the wars in 1 month.
People understood. I am happy. I didn't understand. But Quebec presented a letter with 5 demands. No one has responded to that. We did it, but for us it was easy, I admit. But we made requests saying, yes, it's going really well. We get along very well with Quebec. We talked with the provinces. They made requests. They just have no response, no sound, no images. It's all also for the final sprint of the campaign, the last days with the program of...
But you're talking about, you said that health is a right. It is a right, I agree. But you propose to cut massively in health.
No, not at all.
Mr. Singh, earlier I let you go on. Mr. Singh?
We saw that some Mr. Singh, long-term numbers like Karina Gould also said.
Mr. Singh 1, Mr. Singh 2, Mr. Singh 3. Cut the microphone. You no longer have a microphone. Mr. Singh, because earlier I told you, I let you go on. But now, towards the end, I need to speed up. So we're talking about Quebec. We're talking about French. So does Quebec have the right to defend French, even at the cost of using the notwithstanding clause in advance beforehand? Mr. Poilievre.
Yes. Quebec must defend French. It is the common language of Quebec, and I will defend French. My father has Francophone roots in Saskatchewan. I lost a bit of my French during my teenage years. I married a Quebecoise, and we want our children to speak French, and I understand why it's necessary to protect the French language. As Prime Minister, I will continue to support laws and policies that allow Quebec and the federal government to protect the French language across Canada.
The use of the notwithstanding clause to protect this law, are you against it, Mr. Carney?
I am. There is a question in general. The use of the notwithstanding clause in a preventive manner. It's not necessarily a question of Quebec. It involves Quebec, but it's also Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario. It's a question, do we have rights and freedoms here in Canada? Are we equal? We must consider the balance between rights, that's clear. But the use in a preventive manner, that's a question for the Supreme Court.
Mr. Blanchet, regarding the use of the notwithstanding clause, obviously for you, there's zero problem?
Jean Chrétien, on behalf of Pierre Trudeau, negotiated with the provincial premiers behind René Lévesque's back, and this resulted in the notwithstanding clause, which was the only way to preserve the sovereignty of the Quebec and provincial parliaments. It has been tested. The 4 decisions stated it's not the type of use that's at issue, it's the manner of doing it. The Supreme Court has already ruled. Mr. Carney wants to ask the Supreme Court to overturn a Supreme Court judgment against Quebec.
It's not me. It's not me. The interveners are Quebecers at the Supreme Court.
Are you going to take the money from Quebec taxpayers?
Mr. Singh, read the clause.
You are allowing people to be funded to challenge Quebec law and authority of the National Assembly.
There is the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Mr. Singh, on that question, the notwithstanding clause, French?
I am for the protection of the French language. And during this debate,
I tried to talk about health a few times, and Mr. Roy stopped me several times. Look at my time on the clock. For me, it is less. And every time I tried to raise this issue, I directly responded to something. Mr. Carney said, because it is important to me. It is a question of our country's identity. I am passionate about health issues, and every time I try to talk about it, Mr. Roy interrupts me, stops me. It's unfair because for me, it's crucial in this matter. When I talk to people, they say that what is dear to us, they say it is public and universal health and rights. People need to know that the other leaders on this stage will cut funding for health, and I think that's a bad thing to do. We're talking about Mr. Blanchet, not Mr. Roy, but for the other two leaders. Now, that's what they said. And I have to say it because it's important to me. It's my belief. It's a fundamental belief for me as the leader of the New Democratic Party.
But it's not right to make allegations.
We talked about health earlier. I let you speak. Now it's another topic.
We can talk about health when we talk about identity. Because what is Canadian identity? There are people listening to us. If we don't talk about healthcare, what is Canada's identity? It's if we take care of each other, it's the idea of having a universal and public healthcare system and strengthening and protecting it. We have a crisis. Now we have a healthcare crisis. It's important to also have the time to talk in an open debate about any issue that other people have raised.
Regarding language and health, there isn't much risk for Quebecers to be represented by a Quebecer.
Speaking of languages outside of Quebec,
Mr. Singh, if there are problems in the healthcare system, I am here to defend the healthcare system for everyone, including Quebec.
Very well. Outside of Quebec, Mr. Singh and everyone else, the proportion of Francophones has decreased from 6% in 71 to 3.5% in 2021. How are you going to reverse the trend if there are people listening to you across Canada?
Firstly, we will increase the immigration rate of immigrants outside of Quebec with French as their mother tongue from 10% to 12%. Secondly, we will strengthen, if I may say, here, Radio Canada, CBC, with new governance and a lot of funding. Mr. Poilievre wants to eliminate. We will strengthen Telefilm and the Canada Council for the Arts to increase training.
Very well. Mr. Poilievre.
Firstly, the Conservative Party supported the federal law to ensure that federal industries in Quebec comply with Bill 101. Secondly, we will add more funding to allow young people to participate in French immersion programs in Quebec for people coming from other parts of Canada so they can be enriched by the French language. And thirdly, we will ensure that Quebec has more control over immigration, over the selection of immigrants to better choose those who can be integrated into the workforce, yes, but also into Quebec culture. That's what we want to do to protect the French language.
Mr. Poilievre, obviously, your position on Radio Canada, CBC. Many people have questions. The question is simple. You keep saying we will protect Radio Canada because they provide services to Francophone minorities across the country, but we will abolish CBC. How is such a thing possible?
It's possible. We have important news networks.
They even share. Do you understand the situation?
I understand. I will protect the services of Radio Canada because there are already news services that are exclusively in French. TVA is an example. So it's possible to have a service that is solely targeted on the French language. And CBC can fund itself with its own revenues as a non-profit organization.
Okay. And on what scale?
There is a principle at play. The principle is that the government should only do what the market cannot. And the market will never provide a service exclusively in French to people in communities across Canada. So there is a role for the state to defend information in French. When I was young, in Calgary, it was the only way for me to get information in French. I will protect those services because there is a good reason to do so.
I can rephrase. What Mr. Poilievre proposes to do is to eliminate Radio Canada and CBC. And what he will do is subsidize other companies to produce programs in French. That's a bad idea. We must defend Radio Canada. We must defend CBC, especially after the public inquiry that says misinformation is a great threat to our democracy, so we must invest more. And for me, I'm not a francophone, but I am a francophile. I love the French language. I fell in love with the French language. It's a strength of our country to have more French. Quebec is a strength for all of Canada. The avant-garde ideas that have come out of Quebec. We need Quebec, we need the French language, and we need to defend it.
For the first time since 2011, there are no women on this stage. As a leader, I met this woman, listen carefully, it's very brief, a little earlier this week. Do you have a question for the leaders? What concerns you?
In Canada, the place of women. The place of women.
Possible setbacks?
Possible setbacks. Could there be setbacks in women's rights? It worries me with certain parties.
My question, do you commit to ensuring there will be no setbacks on women's rights and to promoting, for example, free contraception? British Columbia, Manitoba, and Prince Edward Island are already offering free contraception this week. Do you commit to that? Roundtable, Mr. Poilievre.
We will not eliminate that, and we will protect women's rights. I have a message for Canadian women who are listening to us. We will not pass laws to restrict the right to abortion. This has been our policy for 20 years, and it will not change. This is a guarantee that I offer you. We will actually expand women's rights by tackling the crime committed against women. Women are often victims of offenders who are released time and again due to liberal laws that allow the biggest criminals to repeat the same crimes against women. We will put these people, these men, in prison.
It is the only party where more than half of our candidates are women. In other parties, there is a reduction in candidates of diverse genders and women. For us, it is a source of pride. We need a parliament that represents the Canadian population, the Quebec population, and that means half must be women. And we have a list of candidates that follow this intention, this value. For us, it is always the case. We will defend women's rights and also defend access to rights for women.
Thank you. Mr. Blanchet?
No member of parliament from the Bloc Québécois will have the right, as in another political party, to introduce bills or motions hostile to abortion. In the same way as with preventive medical assistance in dying, it will not happen either. Politics as it is practiced today, especially due to American influence, is extremely off-putting for women. There are plenty of small incentive-based means that can be used which add up and encourage female participation. We, at the Bloc, have reached the parity zone. It's a bit disappointing. We would have liked to have 50-50, but it is true that in the current political culture, recruiting women into politics, I have several excellent and very courageous, but it is more difficult. And in the federal parliament, it's more difficult.
Mr. Carney?
Yes, I believe it's an aspect of the nature of politics, of negative politics. Now, it is becoming increasingly difficult to recruit candidates, any candidate. But regarding rights, absolutely, we defend women's rights all the time. But what worries me is the use of notwithstanding clauses, not in preventive circumstances, but after judgments, after Supreme Court judgments. It suppresses the rights and freedoms of Canadians. And it creates, and Mr. Poilievre has proposed it.
For the fact, literally.
I know the situation, but this is a very dangerous development, because if we start with this, the vote will be for. I will give a right of reply. The right to abortion would be next.
Mr. Poirier, the right of reply.
Mr. Carney, I said, in the case where a man killed 6 people premeditated, and the court gave him 25 years, that means 4 years for each life he took. The criminal in this case will be free in those 50 years. You talk about dangerous. That's what's dangerous. Murder. And also the liberal laws that allow criminals to go into our streets and commit this violence. I will never apologize for wanting to put murderers in prison and protect Canadians.
I am not sorry changing Canadian Constitution.
No, but...
Very well, excuse me. Mr. Poirier must respond.
I will use Section 33, and I will use it to put an end to the crime that the liberals have caused with their laws.
You start there and we'll end. Where?
By stopping the murderers.
Everyone agrees that we must have severe penalties for murderers. That's not a point, Mr. Poilievre. You are trying to create points where there are none. Everyone agrees that if someone kills someone, we must have severe penalties. That's not a special point.
That's not true. That's not true because you have seen the other three parties.
Everyone agrees that we must have severe penalties.
Very well, Mr. Blanchet.
I will come back because the other question is very important. Mr. Carney said that I voted in favor of the new official languages law. All the money comes from the old law. And in Quebec, the money for the protection of minority languages goes entirely to English. I voted for the official languages law because the French minorities outside Quebec asked me to request changes. We did it. We voted for it, but we asked that it not apply to Quebec because it harms Quebec.
Gentlemen, debate, yes, which is always imperfect. Mr. Singh, do you see? 22, 10, 24, 25, 24. So do you see yourself? The end is in a parity zone. Sorry for having to cut off your microphone. I wish all four of you a good end to the campaign. I hope for the citizens that we get the financial frameworks as soon as possible so we can verify the cost of your promises.
The platforms, too.
And we hope that the people who listen to us tonight are more informed to go vote. Voting starts at the end of the week.
And the match?
And the match? I don't know what's going to happen with the match.
We'll just go see that.
The match, we have time. There are two. We'll go see that. Thank you very much for being here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, that's how this debate ends. See you next time.
See you next time.